This is the JWN podcast. You know what? Hold on a second. Stop. All right. I think we need to do this episode a little differently. Let's take it down a notch.
Take a deep breath in and exhale, release. This is the JWN podcast.
My guest today is Ashlee Manos. Now, if you're somebody who's skeptical about Eastern medicine or alternative treatments, this is the podcast for you, because I'm also that guy who's skeptical of those types of things. But Ashlee has spent her entire life learning how to make you and I feel better.
I think that I allowed myself to get to know myself on a deeper level than I would have been able to had I continued the path that I was on. And through that has helped me to be a catalyst for others to do the same.
She's a licensed acupuncturist. She's a diplomate of Oriental medicine. She has a master's of science. She's a licensed massage therapist. She's a yoga teacher. She's done so much stuff with her life to make us into happier, healthier people that I think after listening to her story and listening to where she's coming from, you might also come to the same realization that, hey, there's something to this. And at the end of this episode, I will give a recap of my first ever acupuncture session. I basically reached out to Ashlee and said, I wanted to interview you. I also wanted to experience acupuncture and talk about what it made me feel like. So, without further ado, here's Ashlee Manos. My wife was asking me, she's like, can she fit me in tomorrow? I'm like, I don't think you understand. Ashlee's in major demand. She's like booked out weeks in advance. You got to get in there. All right. Well, let's get started on this, because reading your bio, you have had you've packed a lot, and you're not very old.
Yes.
And you've packed a lot.
Yes.
You've lived a long lifetime in your short years here on this planet. So
it's very true.
I guess where I wanted to start is where you grew up.
Yeah. So I grew up in Fitzgerald, Georgia, a small town in South Georgia. My whole family still lives there, actually, for the most part. And yeah, it was, I don't know what you want to know about it, but it was a great childhood.
What'd your parents do when you were growing up? What was their thing?
My mom was a PE teacher, and my dad sold real estate. They met when they were 14 and 15. They lived on the same road. And they literally built their house in the middle of where they grew up, and that's where I grew up. Very small town.
Holy cow. 14 and 15.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you have any brothers and sisters?
Mm-hmm. I have an older sister and an older brother.
Oh, so you were the baby.
Yeah, the baby of all the cousins too, on both sides. So I was the baby of the baby of the baby.
All right. So you're growing up in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Mom's a PE teacher, so I can definitely see some influence there into kind of a body awareness.
Yeah.
And then your dad's in real estate, which is an extremely difficult. It's difficult for the family. My wife's a real estate agent.
Oh yeah.
And it's difficult because their peak hours are usually when other people's hours are free time.
Right. Oh yeah. They're kind of always on call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's pretty stressful for a family to kind of deal with that, because I think every vacation I've ever taken in the last maybe 12 years with my family, my wife has somehow managed to sell a house while we're on vacation.
Wow.
So you can imagine it's we have to make a sacrifice as well for the greater good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, my dad, it's kind of funny how he got into it. It wasn't like, I guess, his chosen path, but he was actually a professional football player. And they moved.
What?
Yeah, he played for the Minnesota Vikings in 74 and 75. And so that was his passion. I mean, he was an incredible athlete. And when he got injured, they moved back to where they grew up. And my mom's dad was big into construction and real estate and that whole scene. So he basically just kind of fell into the job that way, and then did that from then on out. But
So when your mom kind of reconnected with him, I take it, is that kind of what happened, or were they dating since they were 15?
oh no, they were dating since she went with him to Minnesota for. Oh yeah,
Holy cow!
They never split up. They were dating. I mean, he passed away, so he died in 2012. Now, when they had been together for 45 years.
That's amazing.
So that's why I talk about him in past tense. But they had been together for forever, literally, like never dated anyone else. Isn't that crazy? It's like a story you don't hear anymore.
No, it's hard to believe, but obviously it does happen. It's just you never hear about it.
Right.
People never talk about the good things. They always want to kind of gossip about the bad things. But I'm sure there's a lot more people who have had these long, successful relationships they're just not as glamorous.
Yeah,
I guess we don't put those up on a pedestal as much as we should.
Exactly.
So I would imagine that your dad's football career somewhat influenced your wife to get into sports medicine, or not medicine, sports education.
Maybe.
Is that kind of a...
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
They were both into that, right?
They were both into that. I mean, she was a cheerleader and cheered in college, and for the same college in Arkansas that he played football for. So they kind of always had that football cheerleader thing going on. So I guess I don't know how really I think that just became natural for her as well. She was definitely an athletic person as well.
By the time you were in high school, is he already practicing his real estate career and your mom a teacher at that point?
Oh yeah, that was my whole life. So he was in the NFL before I was born. Yeah.
So, all right. So in high school, what kind of person were you? I've asked this question before, and I know it's kind of cheesy, and I know it misses the point of the movie, but I think it makes sense in trying to figure out where you saw yourself in high school. Like, you've seen The Breakfast Club, right?
Yeah. Maybe? Well, it's been a long time, but yeah.
So Principal Vernon, the whole point of the movie, it comes out, not the whole point of the movie, but the end of the movie, they have to write this essay describing themselves, and basically it comes down to them saying, you can't really see us as one type of person. We're all these types of people. But the Principal Vernon from the Breakfast Club scale was, are you a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, or a criminal? So, like, thinking in those terms, where would you have placed yourself in high school? Like, what kind of person were you?
Yeah, well, I've never really thought about it that way. But, I mean, I definitely was also a very physically focused person. So I did gymnastics since I was 5 and was obsessed with it, kind of so much that my parents ended up making me quit. And for many reasons, like the coach was not that great of a person. And so I was definitely loved my gymnastics for a while, and then softball for a while, and then in high school got into cheerleading and competitive cheerleading. Mostly because I could still do gymnastics, but also I don't think it was necessarily in my path to not be a cheerleader, having my mom and dad being a college cheerleader and football player and then an NFL. So I was definitely, captain of the cheerleading team, went on to not only compete in cheerleading in my high school, but with an all-star team that was kind of in the South. So that was a big part of my world. As in high school, I started drinking way too young, was a little bit of a rebel, being the baby, thought I could I really couldn't do no wrong. So I would just push my parents' boundaries a lot. And, my brothers and sisters, or my brother and sister, I say brothers and sisters, because it felt like I had tons of them, because all my cousins, we were all really close. We all lived close together. But I never really gotten too bad of trouble, because I could always get out of it somehow, because I could always compare myself to the others,
Did you find being the youngest, that they had more of a laissez-faire way of dealing with you, that like they were they less protective, or was it the opposite where they were more
No,
protective and you could get away with it because they babied you?
no, they were. I think they were less protective. Like,
Yeah.
I think they at that point they were just like, what, not like whatever, but they just. I definitely got a lot with probably a lot more, than people my age. And there was this threesome of us, me and my two best friends, and we just. I mean, we went to all the older kids' parties, and my sister and my brother were always there, so we could always like be the younger sister and her friends, and so that just kind of got us, starting with all the things way too young. But so anyway, it just became like a party, cheerleading, that kind of thing. School was never really that hard for me, so I didn't have to do much to get through. But I definitely wasn't like into school that much at that age. So I went to 1 year of college and was just at this point in my life, like pretty miserable, to be honest. I was just like, kind of like tired of following the path of like what either my parents thought I should do or my older siblings had done. So I went to 1 year of college, and that year of college was just pretty much like kind of rock bottom for me. I was just drinking way too much and just, not sleeping well, and just kind of like reached this place of like, what am I doing? So I went and missed some school for a while and went and stayed with one of my cousins, who his girlfriend had all these albums that I started looking through, and there were pictures of her in Yosemite out in California. And I was like, whoa, tell me about this. So she told me that she went out there for a summer, and right away I was like, this is what I'm doing this summer. And I mean, it was just like an escape and a way out. So I applied for the job without telling my parents. I just, was like, let's see if I can get the job first. And I got it. And I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to California this summer. I'll be back for school in the fall. And that was pretty much like the last time it was the last time I lived in South Georgia.
Wow. So that brought you to California, that just kind of realizing that you had no aim, and some sort of hook got into you and started reeling you in. So you found yourself in California.
Yeah.
So begins this crazy path of you
Yeah.
getting really like head over heels into, I guess, what you'd call like the healing community.
Yeah.
Did it start right away?
It did. I mean, that first summer for me was such an awakening moment. Like, I got there, and I mean, I knew no one, and I was 18, and I got put in the high country, what's considered the high country of Yosemite, in Tuolumne Meadows, and I had no idea about anything. But later found out that was like definitely the best place to be if you were going to work in Yosemite, because it's not in the valley and it's not where the thousands of people are every day. It's up in the mountains at 9,000 feet elevation, and it's just more expansive, and less people know about it or are able to travel there because it's a little more of a rustic feel. And I worked at just the little restaurant, but being in that type of landscape with that expansive feel and these mountains that are very dramatic, and just the wildflowers, and I don't know, the whole scene, and not to mention, it's California, and, people are just so open and experience life in such a different way, and a slower way. And so that first summer, I was just like, oh, wow, like there's no way I'm going back to college in South Georgia. I knew about halfway through the summer that there was so much more in the world to explore, and that my heart just like was wide open at that point, and I feel like I've always been, but I definitely like yearned for more learning and seeking, and like learning about all these things that I knew nothing about.
Yeah, and that connection to nature. I mean, it's hard to, living in the South right now. It's hard to, especially right now, like in the summer months, to enjoy nature, because Like, I know my body,
Yeah.
it's difficult. It's difficult to be outside for a prolonged period of time. I like to be outside. I love to be outside. When I was younger, I was outside all the time. And now
Yeah.
it's kind of like, oh, my heart rate shoots up because it's just so humid and hot and whatnot. But you go out to that West Coast and you've got that kind of cool warmth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That
And
that
you can breathe.
non-oppressive warmth.
Yeah. You can breathe better. I mean, literally, like the air is more open and thinner, and it's not so oppressive.
So for your first foray into the healing arts was massage therapy, right?
Yeah. So since I, called my parents halfway through the summer and was like, I'm not coming back to college, which didn't go over too well at the time. I was like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'll probably just stay in Yosemite through the winter and figure it out. And um, I had already been thinking about massage therapy school before I even went to California, but out there, I think just the people that I met and the people that were around definitely like let me feel that it was okay to like follow my own heart and my dreams. So, um, my one of my cousins had migraines. This is kind of backtracking a minute, but had migraines, and she lived next door. So she, for whatever reason, would always call me over to help her when she had migraines. And I think I just intuitively knew, like, I don't know what to do to help her headaches go away. So I think from that maybe experience, I was like, oh, I'm good at this. So that's kind of how I started thinking about massage therapy school. And then, as you've probably seen reading my bio, like when I want to do something, I want to do it all the way. So I was like, okay, well, what's the best massage therapy school in the country? And it's just kind of like where my mind goes to, like, I want the best of the best. So I started researching and found a school in Boulder, Colorado. And the very next year I went there, and it was a year program with 1,000 hours, which was at the time the most that you could get in the field.
1,000 hours. Wow. 1,000 hours that's a huge commitment.
Yeah, but I was all in. I mean, I was like, yeah, I'll find an apartment in Boulder. I mean, I was 19 and I was like, ooh, loving this new path. I was like, just felt so free to make my own decisions. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that that person with the migraines, you said it was your neighbor, but it was a cousin?
It was a cousin, yeah, first cousin.
It was a cousin that lived next door. But it's amazing how, and I think this is true for a lot of people that get into any kind of calling, especially in a creative field. But this is also, I feel like there's a lot of similarities in the healing arts. It says art in it.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah.
When you get that one person who kind of validates or opens your eyes to a gift that you naturally have an inclination to,
Mm-hmm.
and that the importance of that. And I think it's important to going forward in like in my own life, when I see somebody that I genuinely think like, oh, they're really good at that, like tell them, let
Yeah,
them know, because you
absolutely.
never know when you're going to be the catalyst. Because look at somebody who is suffering, you found a calling in trying to alleviate their suffering, and that's led you to alleviate the suffering of countless people since.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely. I
it's
agree.
just wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so you did this 1,000-hour training,
Mm-hmm.
and what happens next?
So I literally, from that point on, and I mean, I can tell you in as much detail as you want, but I literally just kind of let life guide me. And I know that sounds so vague, but so for instance, like what happened next is that I did a Thai massage training within that year program. It was just a weekend, like an elective I could take. And that I just was like right away kind of fell in love with that style. And at the same time, that was the first year that I had found yoga too. So simultaneously going to massage school and falling in love with yoga. And this was in 2003. And the teacher of the Thai massage training was going to lead this kind of trip and training in Thailand that very next, like as soon as we graduated in December, we were going to go in January. So I was like, I'm so in, like, I want to go. And it turned out that trip ended up falling through, but I still went. And
Wow.
so, and I went with my boyfriend at the time. So we didn't go with a group of people like I had originally planned and had kind of like talked my parents into, or kind of, told them originally. But I was like, well, I still want to go. Like, I already have it in my mind that I want to like learn Thai massage in Thailand. And so we went for about
Plane tickets are booked,
yeah, this is what I'm doing next. But so I went there for about 3.5 months and studied Thai massage and traveled. And then when I came back, literally for the next 10 years, so my entire 20s, I worked most summers back in Tuolumne, in Yosemite, and it was only a seasonal job 4 months out of the year. So I used that as my summer job, and then in the winters, I either traveled or got like a cool spa job doing massage at beautiful locations. So like Costa Rica for 2 winters, and Santa Cruz and Tahoe for a couple of winters. And then the other winters were traveling. Like I went to India and Nepal and the Thailand trip. And so it was just like a decade literally of moving every 6 months. But just like thirsty for knowledge and traveling and meeting people from all parts of the world that, viewed things so differently than how I, the small world that I grew up in. So it was just like, it was just amazing, So just like one thing led to another.
So how did you end up gracing us with your presence here in the Charleston area? Like, what brought you here?
Yeah, that's a really funny question. Because I never really thought that I would come back to the South, and not because anything's wrong with the South. It's amazing, and I love so many things about it, and I love my family, and I love being closer. But I think because I had found such freedom in other parts of the country and the world, I kind of had this idea stuck in my mind that like this area was like not for me. So when I was living in Tahoe, I met a guy that very first summer in Yosemite, and we kind of were off and on for quite a while. And then we ended up getting married when I was 25. And then a lot of my travels I did with him, not all of them, but some of them. He was an artist and a nomad, and like that lifestyle that he had was intriguing, totally intriguing to me at this time in my life. I'm like, I want more of that world. And so we were living in Tahoe when I decided I wanted to continue my education. I had gotten some pretty incredible experiences with acupuncture and my own health, and was right at the time where I was trying to figure out what to do. I was thinking about naturopath, midwifery, or acupuncture. And so I started doing research again with all the schools, and applied to 2 schools out west. And in the meantime, I had found a school in Asheville, North Carolina that really spoke to me. And I was like, I've heard Asheville's cool. I had visited once, and I was like, that's kind of crazy to move back to the South, even though Asheville's kind of a bubble in the South. But I was like, maybe this will be cool to like be closer to family again and go to this really cool school. And I went to the interview, and just, right away I knew that was the school I wanted to go to. And so we moved to North Carolina, and it's a 4-year master's degree program, very intensive training, in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbs, all of it. And so at the end of that, to answer your question, at the end of that 4 years, I thought I would move back to California, but didn't really know that I wanted to, because it was just kind of what I thought that I wanted. But I had gone through a divorce during that 4 years, and he moved back to California. So I was like, wanted to go back there, but I was like pissed that he got California, because I was like, I don't want to go back to California now, but I was kind of pissed about it. So I was like, well, I can still go. California's big. But in the meantime, Lisa, who owns Blue Heron here in Charleston, Blue Heron Acupuncture and Apothecary. She went to the same school that I went to and graduated 2 years ahead of me. And her and Lauren Becker, they started Blue Heron in 2015, which was the year, no, sorry, well, I don't know, 13. And I graduated in 15. And so she contacted me and was like, hey, would you want to come and work with us here? And I literally was like, no, I'm thinking about moving back to California.
Job opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but it was just something that I couldn't stop thinking about. I, for the next few weeks was like, like this is a great opportunity. I thought the world of both Lisa and Lauren in school and knew that, their practice, so far was going really well down here. And I was just like, this would be kind of dumb for me to pass up this opportunity. So I reached back out to her and was like, I think I am interested. I'll come visit. And just kind of one thing led to the other. And it kind of fell into, it kind of just fell into place so easily that I was like, okay, I guess I shouldn't fight this, and should move here. So 5 years later, I'm still here.
So was that the first time you ever came to Charleston?
It was.
It's pretty intoxicating when you come here. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It really is. It
really is.
Every once in a while, when you live someplace for a long time, you forget. But then you'll be driving and you'll go over some wetlands or something like that, or you'll see a sunset and you'll just be like, you'll remember. You're like, oh, yeah, this place. We're very fortunate to live here.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
And then then a palmetto bug the size of a Volkswagen lands on you. You go like, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of have a love-hate relationship for this type of weather, to be honest. Like, I don't necessarily think I'll be here forever, but I mean, it's kind of been one of those, it's the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my adulthood life. And it's just, everything that has happened to me since I've been here has fallen into place so well and easily that it's kind of a hard thing to turn your back on,
Oh yeah.
So I've kind of,
and the winters are nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
The winters are nice. The summers are long and hot, but they're not. Yeah. I grew up north in New York.
Yeah.
So the winters there are way worse than the summers are oppressive.
Oh
here.
Yeah. I mean, they're like cold to the bone. Yeah. I don't think I could do this. No.
I do kind of fantasize of moving to a more mountainous area, or maybe out west. Not quite. Maybe not quite California, but somewhere close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere maybe Pacific Northwest area. I don't know.
Nice.
I'm feeling that pull at some point I do need to live part of my life in a very different area.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are getting to that age where we're going to have that option. Our kids are, they're grown up, and my son's going to be a junior in high school this year. So once he's done with high school, we get him set up with college. Our doors kind of open, of like what our options are.
Yeah, you're a free bird again.
So do you have any children?
Yeah, I have a 19-month-old son.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm just at the beginning of that you're talking about being on the other end.
It's a wonderful journey that goes by way too quickly. But the reason why I ask you that is I wonder if I know that when we had our children, we're living up north, and my wife is from down here. And the pull that she had, the maternal pull to be closer to her family, was so strong. So did you feel that when you were going through pregnancy? Did you feel like I need to be close enough to my original home area? Is that something maybe that's holding you here?
Not necessarily. I was already living here when I got pregnant, so I guess it was just kind of, I didn't really think about it that much. But I mean, I love my family, but I never have felt like I had to live near them. Like I don't necessarily think that's what's keeping me here. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I wonder about, but it's also, times are very different. Like people are a lot closer now because of things like social media.
Yeah.
Where it's a lot easier to live anywhere in the world and not feel like you're disconnected from your loved ones.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I lived out west, I made sure I at least visited my family twice a year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean, it was, our families, when we get together, we're pretty close, and it's just like, it kind of feels like no time has passed.
All right. So I got a couple of more questions about just kind of how you've got to where you have become this master of healing.
I don't know about that, but
it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but when I read your bio, I go, yeah, you've pretty much got a master's in like the healing arts. You've put in a heck of a lot of work, and you've done a lot for a lot of people. What do you think that kid in college that was kind of hitting the bottom, if she could see you now, what do you think she would say to you?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, I think that I allowed myself to get to know myself on a deeper level than I would have been able to had I continued the path that I was on. And through that has helped me to be a catalyst for others to do the same. Yeah, I think she would be very proud.
Were there any struggles during this journey, this 17 plus year journey, that you had to overcome that ended up opening a door for you that you might not have gone through?
The very first year of acupuncture school, it was a 4-year master's degree program. And the first year I was just so top student, so enthralled with what I was learning in the medicine and so excited, and put a lot of time and energy into that first year, and it was like 4 years to go. And the week after that first year, my dad died of a heart attack, basically instantly. And I was there, and he basically died in my arms. And that was just, still to date, and hopefully was the hardest, moment of my life. And then, on top of that, 3 weeks later was kind of the beginning of the end of my divorce. So that summer after my first year was just the hardest time in my life. And however, I was in this super intensive program, and I honestly feel like having gone through that summer, in that program, in that time in my life, is what allowed me to learn this medicine in such a deep and profound way. Because I needed what I didn't know at the time, but what I know now is that having the support from the people that were studying the same this ancient old medicine that is just so encompassing of body, mind, spirit, and not just like of the physical, but at a very deep level, I was able to really experience the depth of the medicine in that way through this experience. So yeah, I feel like that hard time ended up being probably the most profound part of the journey on my healing path. And most healers are usually have some sort of traumatic event that they've overcome, which I think has kind of kept them there at that level to be able to work with people,
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, for that to happen during this time of your life, you're learning the tools to help other people overcome great trauma, and here you are with the greatest trauma. Right, just right as you, that's whoo.
Yeah, it's a hard one. And I also felt fortunate that I had the years of yoga behind me to just help me navigate the grief. I mean, the grief is never something that you get over, but there's so many layers to it. And I really turned to my yoga and meditation practice to help me get through that. And so that piece too is why yoga is so dear to my heart, and why I love teaching that as well.
Yeah, there's that weird corner that you turn that takes just a long time of effort and just absorbing that grief, that sadness, and then there's that corner you turn where that sadness somehow turns to joy because that the grief becomes, and I don't even know if you might not have even gotten there yet because it's still kind of fresh.
Well, no, I do know what you mean, and I definitely do. There's this rawness in the beginning of grief, and then you can only see that experience, you know, in that moment, and then over time, then there is, yeah, I guess I've not really called it joy, but I do see that. I do know what you mean because now I'm able to recognize the fact that I was like there the moment he died. Like that's a gift, you know. I was there with him, and for a while after, it was just I could only see that moment as the trauma, you know, of like having to go through that. But now it's just such a gift, and now I'm able to like remember all the good memories that my dad and I had, you know, versus just the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you start to recognize the gifts that he bestowed upon you, whether it's that passion that you have in life to go out and get what you want, and to accomplish great things. Obviously, he was in the NFL. He was at the top of, you know, he accomplished great things, and something in that got passed on to you.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that, when you see that he still lives in what he passed along, and then you realize he's never left you, and then that, and of course the memories and all that stuff contributes to the feeling of when you talk about that person, instead of a pang of loss, you feel like this, hey, he's here with me. Like there's this joy, there's this elation that you got to be influenced and loved by that person that you cared about so much and still do care about so much.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. I think it correlates into what you do, though, because I know for me personally, certain things, like I like to run, and a lot of people find running completely miserable. It's hard. It can be painful. It's you know, there's a lot of things. Once you get past all of the hard parts, there's an elation. The receipt you get for your payment of that pain, it's worth it. Like your whole life is just happier and better after you've put in a hard effort in anything.
Yeah.
And I yoga, same kind of thing.
Right.
Meditation, same kind of thing. Definitely, I'm 100% believer in massage therapy. I mean, that stuff changed my life.
Oh, awesome.
Years ago, I was dealing with a extremely difficult, debilitating, like sciatica, like to the point where I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
It was awful. And the thing that turned the corner for me, like I was getting cortisone shots just to make it through the day, that type of thing. And those were, you know, masking the pain, but it was still awful.
Yeah.
And massage therapy, the right massage therapist, instantly changed my life.
Oh, that's
and
so
it was
awesome.
like, holy cow, who knew? The reason I'm going down this path with you right now, I've never tried acupuncture. I've just always been, it just doesn't seem like something I would be into. And for no reason, I have no negative experience with it. It's just, I never really thought much about it. And I just, coming from a skeptical person like me, although I do try to be somebody who likes to trust and verify, to just trust, and I trust you because of the people you've surrounded yourself with, that I know, that I trust.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've gotten to know you, you know, just through kind of social circles as far as in the yoga community.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I trust this person. And here's something that I know my wife tried once, and she was like, oh my gosh, it's like a miracle. Like, you need to do this.
Yeah. And she tried it just once, and that was her experience, which is awesome.
She said to me this morning when I was telling her that I was interviewing you today, she said after she did one session of acupuncture that she had flexibility back that she hadn't had in like years. Like it just unlocked something in her.
That's so awesome.
I'm not looking for a miracle.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with any like ultra specific problem at the moment. There's tiny little niggling things You know what I'm saying? Like nothing major,
Yeah.
besides just the overall anxiety of living in the present,
Right.
which is,
Which is
you know,
plenty.
uh-huh, uh-huh. But I really am just interested in seeing what it's all about. And I can't think of a better person, a more
Mm,
qualified person to go through that journey with than you. And
thank you.
so, what has acupuncture meant for you? Like, how did you? Because there's all of these different things that you do.
Yeah.
What's the thing about acupuncture that kind of made it your
Yeah.
primary focus?
You're right. All the many things. Yeah, I would definitely say acupuncture is my main gig, and it really has been since I graduated from, and that was in 2015. So for the past 5 years, I've definitely like acupuncture has been the main thing that I've done, with massage always kind of being in there as well, and then yoga as well, because I love them and they're a part of me. So it's just kind of always going to be there. But I mean, my first experiences with acupuncture were, there was always something like specific going on that I went in for. So I think my very first time getting acupuncture was when I was living in Costa Rica, and I was really sick. And well, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I was really sick. You know, one of those mornings you wake up with like the worst sore throat ever and just like headache. And I don't know what it was, but I was just really sick. And someone was like, oh, go see this Chinese doctor downtown. He does acupuncture. And so I went, and in that treatment on the table, like it literally felt like, I mean, it didn't actually happen, I don't think, but it felt like fluid was like pouring out of my ears. And after that treatment, it was as if I had never been sick. So that was my first
Wow.
experience. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, it did feel like a miracle or like a magic treatment, you know? And so I was like, oh, wow, okay. But didn't think much of it. You know, it was just like I got a cool acupuncture treatment. And then a few years later, I guess it was when I was living in Tahoe that I started getting acupuncture regularly. And to back up, I grew up with severe asthma, allergies, and eczema. And I didn't let it stop me much in my like athletic world or, you know, any world, but it was definitely, I was sick a lot. And I would probably get sick 7 or 9 times a year. And
Wow.
so my immune system was shot. I had to be hooked up to a breathing machine every night. Like it was just, I was sick a lot. And so I think that plays into all of the seeking of the alternative health and healing world that I did, because I wanted to feel better. And so when I started getting acupuncture regularly, and that's when it really, like, I really saw the benefits. I was getting it, I guess I was probably going every week or every other week for about 6 months. And literally, like, everything that I had always had in my life that I thought I would always have, you know, we think they become normal, all of our ailments, and they all went away. I mean, everything from the allergies, the eczema, the asthma, I had severe menstrual cramps and issues with my hormones, and just like that whole reproductive health was not at par. And I mean, everything just, I felt amazing. And so I think that's what really did it for me.
That's very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I think is, from a skeptical side, you know, people hear these things and they don't buy it, right?
Right.
They're like, you know, they're science this, or you know, they kind of lump people who are into the alternative medicines, or holistic healing, or
Mm-hmm.
ancient medicine, whatever, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Alternative medicine, I guess, is the easiest thing to classify it. But there's a lot of skepticism around that.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, there's also a lot of science in what you guys are doing. You're not going to school for 1,000 hours for a 4-year program, for another 200 hours here, another, you know,
Yeah.
all traveling in the world to learn this stuff, because it's all based on, like, you know, just some weirdo's whim of like health. It's stuff that people have really connected to the body. And and
Yeah.
realized, hey, there's a lot to be learned here about the body, that it's not just about manipulating hormones through medicine.
Right.
There's also movement, there's practice, there's um, activation of muscles through means that you can't normally get to them, say with like through acupuncture.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's a science to it. It's more than just I'm gonna rub some oil on you and magically heal you. And it's like no,
Hmm.
no, no.
Right.
That's not what it's about. And I think I've opened my eyes.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of scientific studies that have come out about it. But I think the hard thing is that when we try to put it in the science world, like it's so much beyond just the science. There is a lot more to it. And I mean, I think in general, when there's something that's been around for this many thousands of years, it always kind of, at least for me, it's like, whoa, wow. Like if it's been around for that long, then there must be something that is to it. Like the physical part of how it works and helps the body and helps all of these things, it's there, and we can use science to see that. But there's so much more to it that I think that's the part that it's kind of out of our realm of the way that we think as Westerners or in our society. And I think the skepticism comes in naturally because it's something that we're not used to talking about as much as the Eastern world is, about this energy and the realm of the spirit world. And it encompasses that too. And I think that's why, if we don't know about it, then we just don't know about it. And then I think most people that I work with, come through the door because they're in pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's especially if they don't know about acupuncture or are just trying it because their doctor sent them, which I do get, by the way. People's doctors have actually sent them. And they get in the door, we deal with their pain, but then they realize something else has shifted and so much more has happened in the treatment than just their physical pain disappearing. And that's, I think, what keeps bringing people back, is wanting to explore what else is this doing. And that's what I love about it so much, because it's helping to bring all of that, into wholeness. I mean, basically what we're doing in acupuncture is trying to bring balance to the body. I mean, homeostasis, if you will, but in a bigger realm, in a bigger world, and than just the physical. And so when we feel more in balance in all the spectrums of our being, then it's this shift. I mean, that you come back for, you're like, oh, that there's something that it's indescribable. And I think that's what people start to really experience, and speaks a lot about the medicine.
I imagine that when you're feeling better in
Hmm.
your physical body,
Hmm.
it's a lot easier to be in tune and pay attention to the needs of your spiritual or your non-physical self, because you're no longer distracted. If you've got a pain in your hip and it really kind of takes over, you're
Hmm.
constantly thinking about this pain every time you move, every time you do anything. It's like, oh, I've got to deal with this problem.
True.
If that didn't exist, then you're freeing up your mind to worry about like this thing that exists in your head that has nothing to do with your physical being.
Yeah.
And so you're able to
Yeah.
be in tune.
Hmm. And I think also some of that is some of our emotional and mental imbalances can even cause the pain, and that's why I say, like, working in a holistic way is a lot of times, what caused that pain. It might not have necessarily been that repetitive movement, however it could have been, but what else is happening in your life that has made you hold on to this pain for so long? And those are the questions that Chinese medicine, ask. And that's what I love about it, because it is holistic in that way. And it's, I think it's why it's so good at preventative medicine as well, because it's not just the physical body that we're working with, it's working on all these levels. And we're trying to bring, so we view the body kind of like we view nature. So there's hot, cold, excess, deficiency, wind, damp,
Mm-hmm.
dryness, all of these polarities or yin yang, complementary opposites is, the yin and yang idea. And all of the climatic factors in our nature is within us as well, or are definitely contributing to something being out of balance. And so we're looking at all of that through pulse diagnosis and tongue and kind of your ailments that you're coming in with or symptoms. We're trying to figure out where the imbalance is, what organ system, what meridian, what type of imbalance it is. And then we use the acupuncture to help bring the body back into balance. So we're not just freeing up the stuck energy and blood that's causing the pain, but we're also working at that root level of what might have caused the pain or what might cause disease later in life. And so it's just all encompassing, I could talk about it for hours and hours, of course. But
you sent me the sheet that I have to fill out of history, and I looked at it. I was like, this is, for lack of a better term, this is pretty invasive. There's a lot of personal information you're asking for here, and that's why. It's because you're trying to look not only into what things are going on now, but what might happen in the future. Based on your medical history. So it makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, because my first reaction when you sent over this form when I signed up, and I was like, holy cow, I feel like this, I need some time.
Do you really want to know all this about me?
Yeah. I feel seen.
But that's kind of the inner workings of it. I mean, we're thinking about, we're painting a big picture of even just history of, what you were prone to as a child and what is coming up now, and, how that plays into the 5 elements, and what that means you might be prone to later in life, and how can we, correct that before. I think that's why the, Chinese medicine is very well known for promoting longevity and preventative medicine. And it's not to say that it's not good at taking care of something that is already present, but it's really good at helping to prevent disease.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. There's a point in my life when I realized my diet was contributing to a lot of problems that were starting to manifest themselves. And I looked at okay, what kind of diet do they give somebody, say, who is undergoing cancer treatment? And it's, a lot of plant-based kind of stuff comes up. So I made some shifts in my life to understand that. And this seems like another way to do that. And I'm very excited. I can't wait now. Now you got me a little too excited. I don't want to get my hopes up too high. I might walk out of there and be like, that was it.
Yeah.
But I
got it. That was hard. No, I didn't feel anything. And I will say that it's not a magic treatment. And it's, with you not having much going on and coming in for one treatment, you might feel some really cool things and you might not. And that doesn't mean that it's not as awesome as I'm making it sound, but it just means that, it is a subtle layer of that we're dealing with. Energy is a more subtle subtlety. And so if there's, say you were coming in with severe back pain, then, and you leave and you're walking again, then it'd be different than coming in with not much. You'd have to really tune into the subtle layers of your being to notice a big shift. But, I'm really excited to work with you.
It's kind of where I am right now in my body and things is really paying attention, trying to overcome the limitations that I know I can overcome if I can just figure out the right path or the right treatment. So I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to briefly talk about, how can people find you online? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah. My website's a good place, mahaholisticwellness.com. And I also do retreats, and that has a different website, Maha Retreats. My friend and I
did want to ask you about that.
Yeah. But there's a link from that. So Maha Holistic Wellness is a great place. You can reach out through email. And
okay. And then the retreats are also, I kind of, when I first, when you came on my radar, I was like, oh, that's the Maha Retreats girl.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Like,
good.
I'm sorry, that's a weird way to explain or to narrow someone down.
Actually, no, that you have no idea how excited that makes me.
Yeah, the branding for it, I was just like, I kind of associated you with because you advertised these retreats, which I'm always just like, I wish I could do something like that.
Why can't you?
Go away for, I did like a weekend retreat here, and it caused more stress, not for me, but for my family. It was worth.
Yeah.
I would have to do something that was more inclusive.
Yeah.
But it would have to be at a time in my life where I could bring my wife with me and we could do it together.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea of her seeing like this, these people post a picture and it's like 25 women and Joe.
Yeah.
It didn't really look. It wasn't a good look.
Yeah. I hear you.
So a lot of these yoga type retreats and wellness retreats tend to be feminine, heavy in their not entirely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's male retreats out there as well.
Yeah, there are. And we've actually always had quite a lot of men at our retreats, which has always made us really excited, just so that it's more all, we've always kept it open to all,
I would definitely I'm always interested in doing stuff like that. And it would be, and Amy, my wife, is definitely interested in that kind of stuff, doing something like that as well.
Oh, cool.
It's just a matter of like being able to, we're both entrepreneurial. She's a real estate agent. I run my own businesses.
Right. Having the time.
So getting away at the same time, especially with, my son who's still in high school at home. It's a prolonged thing is always difficult, but it won't be long before we're able to do those kind of things.
Yes.
We're working towards it.
Nice.
We're working
Good
towards
for
it.
you guys.
The retreat thing looks amazing. You do it in Arizona? Is that?
We did the first 2 years in Colorado at
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado, and then last year we did New York, and next summer we had to postpone this summer, of course. But next summer we're doing it actually near Asheville.
Well, I look forward to see what you're doing with that coming, in the future.
Yeah.
Once we can do those kind of fun things again. And I look forward to this treatment tomorrow. And I'm going to wrap up this podcast with a little kind of post description of my experience and how it went.
Cool.
So I don't leave the people listening to this hanging like, oh, you're good. You're building up
to
doing this thing and then
you're
done.
Right. Yeah. And I'm interested to hear about your experiences as well.
Well, thank you so much, Ashlee.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Namaste.
Namaste.
All right. So it's Sunday evening. I went this afternoon for my first acupuncture session with Ashlee. And because it was my first session, she did a little pre-interview. And let me tell you something. She collected a lot of medical information from me. And she spent a long time, almost an hour, talking to me about me, about the things, what I'm feeling, how I'm doing. In all of my years of life, going to just a traditional doctor, no one's ever sat and asked me the kind of questions she was asking me. It was really a different experience. I kind of had the idea I was going in for this thing. I would go there. She would just make sure that I was healthy enough to do whatever it is I was doing and try to target some stuff and throw me on a massage table and stick me up with some needles. And it was so much more than that. Like, I felt so heard about what's been going on. And it really made me think about the journey of my body and what I'm feeling and why. And then she did some things like she read my pulse, but not like you would at the doctor. She spent some time and she did it from both wrists and did it in different ways. I came in there with a very open mind and also I wasn't too specific about what I needed. And through the pulse reading, she was able to say, you know what, like let's do this. Let's take care of these issues. So I just trusted her, and I went through the whole acupuncture session, and about maybe 7 or 8 minutes into it, all of a sudden I started to feel very similar to like a runner's high. Like I just felt this kind of elation, not quite an endorphin rush, but an endorphin upping, if that makes a sense. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't like whoosh. It was more like, oh, I feel really good and relaxed, and I kind of, let my mind drift, and the next thing you know, I felt really good. Um, and before you know it, it was time to end the session, and I felt like I lost 10 pounds. I walked out of there just feeling lighter, lifted, elated, all those kinds of things. It was really a special thing. I immediately booked my next appointment with her because I can see the benefit of this. This is kind of it's different than any of the other types of things I've done. It's different than a deep stretch yoga session. It's different than a long meditation. It's different than a nice, great, healthy long run or physical workout. It's similar but different. It's kind of like something someone's giving to you instead of something that you have to work to earn. And I'm not used to that. I'm just not used to that kind of to receive that kind of good vibe, that walk out of there without me having to like really suffer first. So yeah, and from talking to my wife, she felt that elation, that feel good feeling for a long time after her first session. So I'm very excited to see if I can continue this feel good feeling. So yeah, I'm being 100% honest with you. I've nothing to gain by propping up Ashlee like this, but she's really good. She's really good at what she does, and I'm sure if you have an acupuncture therapist that you maybe know, I'm sure they're really good too. So if you've never done it before, go out and try it. It's better than you think. Even if you get very little out of it, you're getting a lot more than you think. So give it a try. All right. I hope you have a great day, and peace.